I'm just going to make the mustard slather that we're going to be using on our brisket today, and it's quite simple. All it is you've got a 1/4 cup of Dijon mustard, you've got 2 tablespoons of the vinegar that you get out of a dill pickle jar. If you can't get that, then cider vinegar or white wine vinegar does just as well. We've got 1/2 teaspoon of Worcestershire sauce, and we've got 1 tablespoon of dark brown sugar. I'm going to just mix that all together. Until it's just blended in. Right, so here's our piece of brisket. It's a black Aberdeen Angus. It's a full sheet that we've got from Bob's Butchers. All we've got to do now is we're just going to trim it up, take some of this fat off, just take off some of these loose bits there. What we want to aim for is roughly 1/4 inch of fat just on one side of it, so that we still get the flavour of the fat. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start, I'll take that bit off, have a look at it. Now this is about 7 kilos of meat, which is about towards your 15 pounds weight. So what I'm just going to do there is, looking at it, you can see our shape. Most of the fat seems to be on the other side, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim up this side, take all the fat off, and this will be what we call the bottom side. And then on this, because this has the biggest layer of fat on, I'm going to trim it to 1/4 inch, and then this will be what they call our top side from this point on. And that's the thin end. The only other thing we need to know is that once we've got this off, we're going to get a better indication of where the grain of meat is. Now, this is more important for us because this will show us where we want to cut it. So the grain is going this way across it. So when we finally got this off the barbecue, it's all rested, and we want to slice it up, we want to cut it across the grain. So we just need to make a note of where it is, because at some point later on, once it's come off the barbecue, it'll look a lot different to this. Okay. So, now the light isn't the best for this, but it's not a professional lighting rig, and it's 7 o'clock in the morning. So, I'm just going to do a little bit of this, or else it'll be an incredibly boring video. Well, we'll just take most of the gristle, neck and elastic, fat, sinew. Just so we can get down to a nice layer of meat. Now, if you don't fancy doing this, you could always ask your butcher to do it. Okay, so you can see I've trimmed most of the fat off and some of the sinew, things like that, not too much. Now what you can see here is there's a big line of fat. That's because when you get a full sheet of brisket, they are 2 sheets of meat, and there's going to be a line of fat going all the way through, just there. So all I want to do on this, I just want to take out the worst of that. Just simply because something this big isn't going to render down. And it gives us another place where we can get a little bit of flavour in. Now, remember not to go too extreme with the trimming with the fat off, or else you'll end up with nothing left whatsoever. And it is the fact that it's not just going to add flavour, but in a long slow cook like this, it is what is going to keep the meat moist and juicy by the time we've got to the end of the 12 hours. So I hope you can see there that you can see the run of the meat. Now, usually what they do on the competition circuit, and it's a good tip to try and remember, is to cut off a piece of the meat to create a shape so you can just see where the grain's going to be and where you're going to cut. Now what I've got here is a bit that's just sticking out. It's a bit thin. And the way I'm going to have it on the cue is I'm going to have the big thick wedge here closer towards where the fire is, and the thinner bit further away. And this is just going to get a little bit in the way there because it's very thin. So I'm just going to trim this off down to there. Obviously I'm going to be saving that, and that just creates a shape that hopefully later on I can recognise it, and I'll be able to start slicing this way across. On the other side, not an awful lot needed trimming. Remember, it's about 1/4 inch you need, so that's fine. So now remember, we had our Slather sauce, a bit of mustard. Now you don't have to do this. You could just use apple juice, or you could use nothing at all. Just a bit of beef and mustard always goes well. Also allows you to something extra when you put in the rub on, which will come on next. It will create a type of paste which all goes towards forming the bark, which again just helps form a barrier, locks in all the flavour. And helps lock in all the moisture. You can see by the time we're finished with a big piece of brisket like this, all we're doing is just lightly painting it on. Obviously if you've got a smaller piece of meat, you don't have to sort of like use all of this to try and get a big thick coat, you know, because that could just overpower it. All we want to do is just create a nice little shine there, and then we're going to get our rub. Now, the rub you use can be virtually anything. If you like it spicy, there are quite a few nice Texas ones. The one we use has the Mexican chilies, gives it a little bit of kick. If you don't like it spicy, we would also use like the Kansas City rub. What I'm using here is one of our newer rubs, which is quite versatile. It's quite herby with a bit of oregano. A little bit of sugar that should caramelise nicely with the beef, help form a crust. So we've got a big piece here, and what we're looking to do is we'll end up using quite a fair bit of rub on here. Wow. And what you can see, it's just mixing with the mustard now, mustard slather, and it's just forming a thick paste on the outside. So I'm just going to do the same again. Just again, rub it in. Need a bit more over that end, a bit more down there, I think. There we go. That is the preparation done. Now, ideally, you want to wrap this up in cling film if you can. Let it rest overnight, let the flavours get in. If you haven't got the time, pretty much like I haven't got the time today, this is going to be going straight onto the barbecue next. So, we've got our piece of brisket on our Traeger. This is the Pro 34, so see, quite big. We've got a tray of water, which you might see at the side here. This just helps maintain the moisture in the inside. Now, what we're going to use is one of the temperature probes. We're going to stick it into the thickest part we've got there, and then we're going to leave it at the moment. As you can see, what we've got is we're mostly looking at the thick end towards where you would have coals, or the hot end. Doesn't really matter too much on the way it is on the Traeger, but it's the fat side down as well at this point. We're going to come back in about 5 hours and we're going to flip it over. What we're going to do next is we're also going to create the Mop Sauce, or a spray in this case, that we're going to spray on every hour, and that's it. One other thing just to mention is, obviously we're on the Traeger here, I've just had the lid open, but we're looking at 121C on here. Can possibly go a little bit higher, but 121 is roughly around the 250 Fahrenheit. So we'll just let that get back up into temperature again. Right. So we're 4 hours into cooking. We've been mopping the brisket, and what I'm about to do is we're about to just flip it over and rotate it so that the top side, remember that's the bit with all the fat on, this is now on the top, and we're also going to rotate it 180 so the thinner end will be towards your coals. Again, doesn't matter too much with the brisket, with the Traeger here. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to get our mop sauce. So here we've got our mop sauce. I'll put the recipe on later, but basically it's beef stock, some garlic, cloves, a bit of onion, some Worcestershire sauce, and this is what we've been mopping it with. Just again, adding a little bit of flavour, helping keep it moist. We do that every hour. So put that away again. At the moment, after 4 hours, we're looking at about 70 degrees is the internal temperature. So we'll come back again. So another hour's gone by. Just going to take our mop sauce. Just going to mop it all over, help keep it moist. Okay, we're about 9 hours in, and as you can see, the crust is there. Still see it's quite juicy. What we're going to do is we're going to turn it around again. Down with our mop sauce. Again, over the top. Just to help keep everything moist. Now at the moment we're about 185 on the 180 on the internal temperature. 185 is what we're aiming for. So this is the point that we're going to keep regular checks onto everything. Okay, so just got to about 6:30 at night. It's been in for roughly 11 hours. Like you can see, still quite tender there. Got a nice crust on the outside. You can just about see the cut that we made earlier, just to remind ourselves where the grain was going in that way. So we're going to be cutting across this way. So let's see how we've done. So the internal core temperature we were looking for was 185 Fahrenheit, which is about 85 degrees. And we've been letting it rest for about 20 minutes since we took it off the barbecue. Just cutting it in 1/2 centimetre strips. Hoping you can get to see that. I'll just move the camera down a bit. That you can see that when we're on there, it's still quite juicy. It's not dried out even after a long 11-hour cook. And just gonna pull it out there. Just there, you can see our smoke ring. We've got our crust there. Just lift it up. There we go. That's our cooked beef brisket.